Hello, my name is Timothy Hawkinson, and this is a brief mini lesson over the judicial branch, specifically looking at the Supreme Court and some information and content regarding its structure and its powers. So the first thing that we're going to be looking at is just a brief review of the branches of the United States government at the national level. So we're looking at the executive branch first, which just is set up and is the president himself, just the single individual that sits as head of state. Then we have the legislative branch with the House of Representatives and the Senate, elected officials that represent the different states and the people that live within them. And then the judicial branch, set up and is the Supreme Court at the national level that rules on different things. And so we'll kind of take a little bit closer look at the judicial branch and some of its rules and how it interacts with these other branches as we go along here. So the separation of different powers that the branches have. The executive branch has the power to enact laws that have been passed by the legislative branch. Once it passes through both the House of Representatives and the Senate, then the president can sign those laws into existence, essentially, and then can start enforcing those. The executive orders that a president can issue is also another power that they have. So they can basically tell like different cabinets or branches underneath that are under the executive branch's authority to start doing things a certain way or to follow certain policies. And so that's just another way that the executive branch can interact within the United States. The legislative branch, as we've already kind of briefly mentioned, has the power to pass laws and bills and to debate those and put them into existence. And then the executive branch in this situation has the powers to rule on legal disputes, also known as the judicial review, to look at laws, bills, orders that have been passed and determine whether or not they are constitutional, whether the law backs those bills or laws being in existence. So looking at a couple of checks and balances as they pertain to the Supreme Court, checks that exist that keep the judicial branch from having too much power. First off, the executive branch has the power to appoint justices to their positions within the Supreme Court. Then once they've been appointed, then they have to go through a confirmation process. The Senate, part of the legislative branch, confirms and says, yes, that is a good appointment. That is someone that we want to be in position in the Supreme Court. The legislative branch is also responsible for setting up and putting into place the structure of the judicial branch. And the legislative branch also can impeach officials and justices that they feel have violated laws. So the way that the judicial branch counteracts and can kind of check those powers is through judicial review and exercising that right mainly on laws and orders that have been passed by the other branches. So very quickly, taking a look at the creation of the Supreme Court, Article 3 of the Constitution sets up the Supreme Court. Article 3 basically gave responsibility of setting up the judicial courts to Congress to design and determine what would work best for the country. The Judiciary Act of 1789 was originally, right off the bat, created 6 Supreme Court justices and set up 3 different levels that the federal courts would take. Those are district courts, circuit courts, and then ultimately the Supreme Court. The number of Supreme Court justices was expanded to 9 in 1869 to reflect the growing country. So a couple of really quick things, important facts to know about the Supreme Court. There's no set requirements to be appointed to the Supreme Court. All that it takes is an appointment from the president and then confirmation by Congress. So there's no like qualifications or criteria set in stone that would restrict somebody from becoming a Supreme Court justice. The justices serve for life if they are appointed. As we've talked about, they can only be removed by stepping down if they die while in office, or if they are impeached and convicted by Congress. The Supreme Court is a part of the constitutional court system, which includes the appeals court, the district courts, and Supreme Courts, which hear and try cases. The Supreme Court decides which cases it will hear and issues rulings on it. So not every court case that comes across their desks is heard by it. So they receive about 7,000 petitions a year, but only 80 to 150 of those cases are actually seen and listened to by the Supreme Court. So the main thing that the Supreme Court does for the nation is they set precedent. Their decisions determine like what court cases should be ruled on in the future for different areas. So famous landmark cases that deal with civil rights or state constitutionality or state rights, the Supreme Court has the ability to influence and look over those, which will influence like what direction the country takes in determining further court cases like that. So in conclusion, the judicial branch is a very important part of stabilizing the nation, keeping laws and the order and peace that is necessary for citizens to lead lives that are fulfilling. And they also try to keep in check overreaches of power by the executive and legislative branches. So in order to explore more about the Supreme Court systems, you can go to uscourts.gov and click on the heading About Federal Courts to learn more. Thank you.